Hello and welcome to an episode of the Manufacturing Leaders Podcast with me, Mark Bracknell, Managing Director of Theo James Recruitment. What a treat we have in store for you today. Today we invited Daniel Stanway, a transformational business coach, someone with a background in manufacturing leadership, and for the last 10 to 15 years he has been going into manufacturing organizations and helping their leaders become better leaders through process and continuous improvement. It was a real insightful episode this where I learned so much. I think my main takeaways were the importance of communicating a goal down to the employees, but actually why that goal is important to them. I think as leaders sometimes we think about the bigger picture and we communicate the end goal, but not necessarily get them to understand why they need to be invested in the first place. And it was a real interest episode we talk about the psychology of humans and the need as humans to work in a real safe space where you can be able to make mistakes and learn from those mistakes and have an environment where people can innovate and think about new ideas. This is going to be one of those episodes as a leader where hopefully you're going to come away and want to inspire and motivate people in your team and actually come away with tangible tools to do so. Daniel has written a book, which is also an audio book, which is nearly finished, but is already available for you to listen to or read. And he goes into depth about some of the lessons along the way in that book. So it's definitely a bit of a different episode this, where you're going to understand from a real transformation leader how to be a better leader yourself. So please sit back and enjoy the episode. Please just do me the honor of clicking like or subscribe. Really helps sort of grow the show as well. And feel free to leave a comment and share with others. So thank you very much. Hope you enjoy the episode. Excellent. So a massive warm welcome today to Dan Stanway, who is a business coach, a transformational coach, someone who's worked very closely with multiple manufacturing organizations, which is why I'm super excited to have him on here today. How are you doing, Dan? You all right?
Yeah, really good. Thank you, Mark. How are you?
I'm good. And we were saying beforehand that normally my process here is obviously we have the prep call, which we've had. I normally have a list of potential topics and questions-ish rough that we sort of go through. We don't really this time around. We're going off the cuff, so it should be quite fun. So let's see how it gets
Looking forward to it.
The first question is the same question I ask everybody who comes on. So I'll be keen to hear your thoughts on this. So what does it mean to you to be a leader? What do you say?
Yeah, well, I think the word that always springs to mind for me is that of privilege, and I think it's an act of service is the way that I see it, and in a nutshell, that's it. I mean, outside of work, I'm a coach of a junior football team, and to see those boys develop as people, not just as footballers. That in essence, just in a nutshell, it's a privilege and absolutely an act of service. And the same goes when you're helping people as well.
Yeah, I love that. And I think all great leaders have that in them. Do they see it as a privilege to make people better, which obviously you do. I think people get into management for different reasons. So has that motivation changed over time for you? If you go back right to the start of your career, what do you say?
Well, that's a really interesting question. So yes, yes, it certainly is. I mean, you can probably tell from my accent. I'm originally from Middlesbrough, and I think that's that early sort of childhood really shaped the way that I kind of view the world, or the lens that I view the world. And I think, my own little sort of personal story. Yes, I wanted to get on in life, so there was an element of kind of sort of survival and thriving that came from the direction that I wanted to go in. But I think just ask the question again. Sorry, Mark. I just missed that.
Yeah, in terms of, because I think that when you first get into leadership, you get into it because you want to earn more money or you just want to progress. And I think, as part of your career, then the pattern I've seen with people who typically come in here is that good leaders see it as that privilege and see it as a position of responsibility. But I don't think you start out on the journey necessarily wanting that. It's just it's almost like an added benefit from being good at your trade. Do you think that?
Yeah, absolutely. So yes, I think there's an element where we all have that kind of, I'm doing it, for a sense that I have. But certainly as I kind of moved on in my career, and you start to realize that that what you're doing is helping people, and then there's a reward in and of itself from that when you see people grow. So I think, yeah, as a certainly coming out of, I think we kind of get kind of trained or programmed in that way. Some of us go to university, if we're lucky enough to do that, and we move through that, and it kind of is all about ourselves in the early stages of our lives, and that's kind of the way that we're brought up as children. And then as you move into the world of work, you start to realize that you are part of a community, whether that's a local team, a broader business, or how the business fits in the larger community, or otherwise. And yes, so that has definitely been part of the arc of my life, realizing that what I do has a place in the world. And so, yeah, we've all got mortgages to pay and so on and so forth, and maybe families to bring up. And there's an element I've got to look after that. But broader than that, the stuff that gets you out of bed or gets me out of bed on the morning, absolutely is about that privilege and that act of service.
And what was harder, managing and training teams in manufacturing, or managing the kids footy team?
Yeah, there's a lot of parallels. I have to
Yeah,
say there is a lot of parallels. You see human nature for what it is in the raw.
yeah.
I mean, the team that I coach, it's a team of boys, a team of 11-year-old boys, and they just say what's on their mind. It just comes out, and it comes out raw. And in some ways that makes it easier. And you think, oh God, okay, right, that's whatever they've just come out with. And I think in adults, it's sometimes it's easier to it's harder to spot, but it's still the same thing. So I'd probably put them on a parallel, but for completely different reasons.
I like to just go back briefly in terms of, because obviously very interested in what you do, but I kind of interested in why and how it first started. Because now you are someone who goes into, let's say, manufacturing institutions and helps leaders become better leaders.
Yeah.
What did was this always the path you wanted to go down, or how did it all first start for you? Would you say?
Um, No, I think if I think right back to the early days, I kind of did what I think a lot of people did, which is I followed the advice of the career advisors at school and at college, and what are you interested in? I think at the time I was very much interested in engineering, and also I have to admit, a massive fan of Top Gun at the time, so that kind of led me into aeronautical engineering. And I think while studying that at university, I just kind of I realized it wasn't it really wasn't me. That kind of the engineering side of it. It was interesting, but it wasn't really a passion, and I was much more interested in the people aspects. And so I got kind of naturally drawn towards whether it be project management, so that's management with people, or into leadership roles. And so I think I had that just as a natural instinct, all the way along. But I kind of fell into continuous improvement. I think probably because my first job as a manufacturing engineer, there's a natural kind of segue from, improving or optimizing how a production line works, and then how we were taught what continuous improvement was back in the early noughties, whether that be Lean or Six Sigma. You'd go along, and I mean, I eventually did a Six Sigma Master Black Belt, qualification. But whatever those things are, it was always really about the people aspect, and how can we help people optimize their best. And I think that was an underlying theme, but I didn't really kind of articulate that in my own mind until much later in life. And there was kind of a key point for me. So I had a normal career with, going through, operational leadership roles, getting promotion, maybe finding that I was at a bit of a dead end in a job and I needed to move, those types of things. But it was as a plant manager that I really started to get the itch for wanting to really help businesses become what I would describe now is achieve their potential. And for some reason, being a plant manager within a business just didn't tick that box for me. But going and doing it and being a lean consultant, as I set myself up as, back in, about 2013, 2014 now, something like that. Back then was a way of just being able to move from business to business and help them be a little bit better. But a kind of a crucial kind of point within my own arc. I would describe it was I was actually doing a gig as a lean consultant, and I won't name names, but it was actually on a night shift for an organisation that maintained railways. And I was there, and I'd been asked to come in and help them set up a lean system and eliminate waste and so on and so forth. And it was on that gig. The leader asked me. He was the supervisor, the manager, I should say, for the night shift. He just said to me, "Dan, what are you doing here?" And it was just like a really simple question. We all have these moments, these things that we always remember. And that for me was, I sort of sat there and I thought, and what the words that came out of my mouth were something like, I'm here to help you. And when the words came out, I realized that is what I'm doing here. I'm not here to help them put in a Kanban system. I'm not here to help them, to eliminate waste or, do those types of things. That's a kind of a byproduct. I'm actually here to help them. And it was a kind of a panacea moment for me where I started to move away from systems and processes and tools to really understand the kind of the psychology of why people were doing what they were doing. And I remember looking through that particular contract, that particular project, through an entirely different lens, and I got a different results. I got what I felt was a much more ingrained results where I was going to leave them with something that stuck for a long time rather than, something that would only be there while I was looking at it, or perhaps while their bosses were looking at it, and then they would just go back to doing what they were doing. So that kind of arc is led me to where I am now, and I think that was probably around about maybe 5 or 6 or 7 years ago, and I've never looked back since.
Excellent. So that legacy for you has always been extremely important.
Yeah, absolutely. It was an underlying. I don't think I was aware of how important it was to me, but certainly there was something in my background, being brought up in the area that I was brought up in, post-industrial northern town type of thing, where there was a definite interest in the people and making society a little bit better, and how do we get better to do things and lift it. And I carried that through which is where I am at the moment. Yes.
Excellent. What I want to talk about soon is, obviously, I know you've virtually finished or finish a book, which I well, hopefully can get some teasers and some tips out of that, because I think it'll be a great place to start. Before that, and this is probably a big question, difficult to answer, but out of the businesses you've worked with and all the people you've helped, is there a common theme of an error or that you see in businesses when you first start working with, and almost a low hanging fruit for you to start putting them in the right direction? Would you say?
Yes, it's a really broad definition I would use is not building in the kind of the human psychology side of change from the start. So I think, and I certainly used to do this, whether it would be a divisional continuous improvement manager or otherwise, you would start any change effort, or you would start the plans for what we're going to do as a business next year. You would start from a basis of what's the methodology, what are the tools and techniques we need to use, and you would start from a very logical, very rational point of view. But what businesses are not doing at that point is they're not actually thinking about how are we going to change the attitude, how are we going to change the way people perceive the change we need to make. And so they go headlong into designing a methodology, designing the plans, and it's all very robust and it's all very well executed. but it's not designed with the human brain in mind. The thing that we all are, this being a human being, the existence of how we are as humans, and I think that is that is it. If you change that lens, if you kind of go, okay, let's put that down and reduce the importance of the rigor and increase the importance of how are we going to help people understand first of all, the Simon Sinek start with why stuff, understand why we need to do it first of all, and then help them internalize the change that needs to make. And I think that's the number one thing that I would always, so that's the number one mistake I see, and that's the number one thing that I would always point people in the direction of.
Do you think that's because a lot of decisions are made by, real senior leaders? And I'm thinking, when you talk about that, I'm thinking of maybe mistakes that I've made in the past where I've thought about as a business where we need to go and I've almost reverse engineered the process to get there. But like you say, I've not necessarily factored in the emotional psychology of what it means for them and why should they do that. Am I on the right lines there?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. What 100%, 100% of that. You know, so I'm not a psychologist, right? I'm not a psychologist. It's but I am a coach. I mean, I am studying for an ILM level 7 in executive mentoring and coaching type of thing. But I think that's really just that's part of my passion to really try and understand more how I can help people. But the thing that I find most useful when explaining this is kind of the use of models. So if we think about, if I coming from an engineering background a little bit, if we think about sort of Newton, Newton came up with his laws to describe the world. They've got the Newtonian laws, and what we now know is that that model is flawed. It's not actually the whole truth. However, it is still remarkably useful and describes so much about what, if we want to build a bridge, even if you want to put a rocket into space, you can use those laws and you won't go far wrong. And I think there's also psychological models which describe how the human brain works. And I think the thing to count one of the ones that stuck out at me, and I actually keep it on my desk. There's a book by Shad Helmstetter. It's from the 1980s, I think it is, and he describes it. Basically, it's called "What to Say When You Talk to Yourself," and I find it one of the most useful models. And I think doing the studying coaching and learning about all the different types of models that you can got that describe the way that the human works, he describes a really useful one. A really useful model, and basically to put it into to explain it in short, behaviors are a result of a process in the brain that starts with programming and beliefs. And I think if you want to sort of think about how do I change behaviors, how do I change actions, if you only focus on the behaviors and the actions, you will get a certain result. If you focus on the programming and beliefs that exist within people collectively, because we all have, when you're in a business, you all have shared experiences that generate beliefs and so on and so forth. If you focus there, the actions and behaviors will take care of themselves. And so it's absolutely, if you think about the business, you do, and we all do it. We do the rational structure. We do all of those things first and foremost, and we think, right, and yes, we need to take waste out of the business. Well, we'll have to use, the 8 wastes. We're going to need Kanban systems. We're going to need short interval controls. We're going to need all of these things. So that's great. But what about the person who's never seen these before? What about the person who's actually a little bit worried about what it's going to mean to them? What about the people that have been through this before and implementing a system like Lean turned out to be a bad thing for them personally? All of those things are actually what's driving the behaviors and driving the performance of people as individuals. So if you focus on that, and the way you focus on that is through the way in which it's deployed, which is in a coaching manner, which is about asking rather than a consulting manner, which is about telling. You can help people derive their own beliefs, or maybe challenge their existing beliefs, and so that it changes, and then they'll develop a different attitude, which will develop a different set of feelings, which will ultimately drive the behavior that you would probably want.
Apologies for interrupting this episode with a very quick announcement about my business. Theo James are a specialist talent provider specifically to the manufacturing and engineering sector. I'm incredibly proud of what we've achieved since our inception in 2015. We specialise in roles from semi-skilled trades right the way up to our TJ exec search arm of the business, both from the contract and permanent side. We offer both bespoke one-off campaigns for hard-to-fill roles or a full partnership service where we become an extension of your business. For any information, please get in touch with me or the team. I hope you enjoy the rest of the episode. Thank you.
So yes, it's about focusing on the psychology first, and the tools and the techniques and the methodology and the program management and the rigor kind of second, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, really interesting. This has obviously led you to write a book, which I imagine isn't easy. Everyone I know
Yeah.
that's written a book has said it's been bloody hard work.
Yes.
What led you to want to do that?
It was honestly, it was just an itch that I needed to scratch, and I think if I was to go onto my hard drive, I've probably got about 5 or 6 attempts that where I got stuck at the first page or I got stuck in the first chapter. But no, yeah, last year. I just took some time out, a little bit of a sabbatical. I gave myself a little bit of time, and I kind of wanted to formulate all of the thoughts that I had about all the experiences that I've had and kind of distill it down to be able to explain to people, if you wanted to make a change, what's the best way to make the change? And so yes, I just sat down and just started really writing and just letting it flow. I think I was just lucky enough to hit a vein, and it just started to come out. And it kind of started. It's really interesting actually, because the ideas that I had at the end of the book are actually not the ideas that I had at the start. But trying to explain it to somebody, I had this kind of person in mind as I was writing it. Trying to explain it to them, I kind of thought, no, that's not going to work, and it changed the ideas. And I eventually came up with this thing that I call focused excellence. So like operational excellence, but it's focused, and it's 3 things specifically. It's about having the right techniques. It's about having eliciting motivation in the right way, and then doing that within a team or a group. So it's about culture. And actually splits the motivation into 2 things, whether it's goal focused motivation or identity focused motivation, as I call it. But yes, I kind of formulated this thing, and it was only at the end that I came up with a title, and I still don't like the title, and actually I still regard the book as being unfinished, and which is why I've not actually gone to the full publication. But yes, it's available on ebook. I give it away freely. I even recorded an audiobook version, and that's available on Spotify. And unfortunately, it is my dulcet tones that people have to listen to. So, maybe putting it on 1.5 times the speed or something like that can help them get through it a little bit. Yeah, I mean, it was the most rewarding thing, and it's one of those things where it leaves you really exposed, because it's kind of, you just put that idea out there, and if someone doesn't like your idea, what does that mean, type of thing. But yeah, I mean, I love the process, and I've made myself a promise that no matter what, I have to draw it to an end this year. So
Okay.
I'm probably going to add to it a little bit, change it a little bit, and then go for full publication before Christmas anyway.
What have you learned about yourself from writing the book?
Oh, wow. Well, fantastic. I think it's certainly been a massive slice of humble pie. I think is the honest answer. And I think when when writing the book, I have to kind of relive the experiences of what has brought me to the current conclusion, which includes the mistakes that I've made. And reliving that is painful. It's just as painful as it was when it happened. And I think that's helped me understand how flawed and fallible I am, but also at the same time to kind of give myself a little bit of a break to say that, yeah, but you learn from that. You kind of You dusted yourself off. If you made a trip or a fall, you got up and you carried on, and you implemented what you learned. You reflected on the mistake and then carried on. So I found it a very humbling experience. And as much as the ideas, now you've asked me the question, and I'm thinking on my feet really. The as much as the ideas that I ended with are not the ideas that I started with, I think yes, it fundamentally changed me as a person from before I read it to after. So that's quite profound actually when I think about it. Yeah.
Now, what I'm interested in, if I was an engineering manager and I just, I sat down, I had 10, 15 minutes to either listen or read some of your book.
Yeah.
I appreciate you can't give it all away in here. What if I just picked up a random page or a random chapter? What do you think would be the most interesting for them to pick up and read, and what lesson would you want them to come away with? It might be something really specific. It might be something quite holistic. What do you think you'd be quite pleased them to come out with?
Yeah, I think I would direct them to the identity based or the identity focused motivation section, just to increase the importance of that. And there's loads of other material that's out there which talks about this. And a big influence for me was a book by Daniel Pink called Drive. I don't know if you've read it.
Yep.
And it was kind of one of those books where, as you're reading it, you're just going, yes, 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 yes. This guy's on the same page as I am. He's there. This is great. And there's a few differences that I have in terms of what he's produced, but you know, the I would definitely direct anybody to kind of read or listen to that section of my book, but let that open the doors to all of that. Daniel calls it intrinsic motivation. I kind of call it identity-based motivation. But it's things like within that is yes, we all know that we need autonomy. We all know that if we've got to choose our own, our identity. But if I think about like my the roles that I give myself outside of work. So, that I've been given, whether that's as a son or a spouse or a parent or a guardian or as a sports coach. There's a key factor in all of this, which, if you're an engineering manager or if you're an operations manager, this might help sort of, maybe some pennies to drop, is that within the minds of all the people that work for you, they have an idea in that all of these rules that they adopt. I would put good money on the fact that none of them want to be bad at what they adopt. So I don't want to be a bad son. I don't want to be a bad spouse. I don't want to be a bad father. I don't want to be a bad sports coach. I don't want to be a bad business coach. In my mind, I've got this idea. I want to be good at it. And it helps formulate who I am in my identity. And from that, I draw motivation, gets me out of bed every day and so on and so forth. And I think that's something that I wasn't taught as in the early part of my career. It was all about systems and processes and so on and so forth. And I think that just as an isolated lesson or as an isolated kind of understanding is as you look at your team, if anybody's listening to this, they've got their earphones in or otherwise, just look around the office, look at all of the people you've got there, and in their minds, they have this pre-programmed idea of wanting to be good at the thing they've decided to do. You've got to embrace that. You've got to allow it, and that's a concept of proficiency, as I call it. So in the workplace, there's great tools, skills and versatility matrix and otherwise to allow people to get better and become good at what they're doing. But within there lies a real kind of kernel of truth that if you want to elicit motivation, and what I mean by motivation is, this is not about control and compliance. This is not about you come in, I'm going to pay you to do a job, and you better do the job from when you come in to when you leave. This is about how do I inspire motivation? How do I elicit, that drive that people have to want to be the best at whatever they're doing? And the proficiency aspect, allowing people to get good at what they do, requires something, and it requires being allowed to make mistakes. because you only get good at what you practice, and you are terrible at whatever you practice from the start. And I think that's something that I've certainly learned as a junior football coach is, how to kick a ball. How do you kick a ball? Well, unless somebody tells you and then allows you to practice at kicking that ball, you're never going to get good at kicking a ball. So they've got to be able to make mistakes, but do it in a safe environment, and another great model that we all know, the Maslow's hierarchy of needs model. It's true. It works. There's a lot of criticism. I've read a lot of criticism about it over the years, but it's a model that's 80 years old. And it's true. People need psychological safety. From psychological safety, they can be allowed to make mistakes. If they're allowed to make mistakes, they'll get better at what they do. Because they get better at what they do, they'll develop a sense of identity. Because they've got that sense of identity, they will derive motivation from it. And you can apply that motivation at whatever it is you do as an organization, as a team, or otherwise. So, a long answer to a simple question, but I would definitely focus on the identity based motivation aspect of the book.
Interesting. If I think of things we've implemented and changed here over the years, some have stuck and some have embedded into our daily habits, where others and probably most haven't. And they're often sometimes the ideas I've been quite excited about and on reflection probably haven't pushed them as hard or been consistent hard. Why do some processes stick and some just fall by the wayside?
Uh, so I think it's there's a kind of there's a process that we kind of go through. I mean, there's a lot of kind of change models out there, but I think it's called the ADKAR model is something that's really interesting, or the Kubler-Ross change curve model, those types of things. Those models, rather than the kind of Kotter's 8 steps or anything like that, which is about sequencing, there's other change models out there which describe the kind of the process of how we think about the thing we need to do, and ultimately it's about outcomes, right? So when you look at this, the outcome that you want for the organization or the business in inverted commas might not be the outcome that as a person they're seeing any benefit for. So I think this is whether you call it kind of a win-win, and there's lots of kind of traditional ways to describe this. But again, if I just point towards the sort of identity piece, you need like a meaning or a purpose about why do I need to do this, and what does that mean for me? So there's the what's in it for me stuff, that which is kind of points to this direction. But if you can connect your businesses, whether that be a vision or a mission or even just a rationale for why the business exists or why the organization exists and what part they play, if you can connect that with their own sense of meaning, that'll be the things that will stick. When there's no meaning at all, it will of course just start to drift because it'll just go to the back of the minds and other things will take over. So I think there is a process that I think kind of when you understand it, it seems very straightforward, but when you kind of start to implement this initially, it can seem a little bit alien. But you do genuinely need to think about the start with why stuff. What is it? You want this person to fill out this form every day. Why? If you can help them make the connection, doing that does this, which gives this, which is it allows you to be what you want to be, and you being what you want to be helps the organization achieve its place in the world. Well, that's quite a simple process. And I think quite often we follow a compliance route. I know people whose job it is to be an auditor, which is just to go and check that people are doing what they're supposed to be doing. Well, what if you didn't need to do that? What if you didn't need auditors and inspectors? What if it just happened because people can make all those connections themselves? So I think in there's probably the answer to your question. Some of the things that you'll have implemented will stick because it means something to them, and other things I'll just be like, I've got no idea why I need to do that, and so they'll just at the first opportunity just put it to one side and wait for someone to come along and maybe check if they're using it or not.
Can you use a real life, well, a pretend real life example? If there's an engineering manager driving to work now,
Yeah.
and their boss has said to them, look, we need to, we need to reduce our downtime. Our downtime is just way too high. Reduce it. And their job is to try and change something or motivate the team to do that. What will be the first steps they need to take to start to implement that? Given that, let's say they understand what the process is actually going to be, how
Yeah.
are they going to sort of motivate the team to do that?
Yeah. I think, in a very generic way, I would just get the team in and I would have a discussion with them about values and beliefs. It's as simple as that, you know. So I kind of, at a personal level, however you facilitate the conversation, what are you doing here? And I think what will derive from that conversation, if you've got a low trust environment, that will be a really difficult conversation. But just having the conversation will start to build trust. But if you can get to a place of enough trust, if the trust bank or the trust vessel has been filled far enough, or what you'll find is people will start to express why they're doing the job they're doing. And for some people, and it comes back to this kind of concept of identity. For some people, they need to pay the mortgage. Well, why do they need to pay the mortgage? They need to pay the mortgage because they've got a family that lives in that house. So they've got a role associated with that. So if you can tap into, okay, how do I help you be that? For other people, it's a carer. For other people, and I am stereotyping now, but maybe, a younger generation that have got some, ambitions about what they want to achieve in life. You can tap into that as well. So if you speak to all of these things and you can kind of understand what are the kind of values and beliefs, and have a very open and honest conversation, you can start to understand what the real shared values and shared beliefs are within the group. Now, if you find that what's there isn't what's needed, well, just like in any kind of problem-solving process, you're probably quite close to root cause now. So if you can address that root cause, compliance, if you want to use that word, of maybe doing the preemptive maintenance they need to do, or for the people on the production lines to maybe run the machines in the way they need to be run, or otherwise, if you find that they've got, some people might say it's the wrong attitude, but the attitude is derived from something, and it's derived from values and beliefs, and what I would call programming, which is how you interpret those values and beliefs and applied in a particular situation. And although it might sound might sound a bit woo woo, and it might sound a little bit kind of, I would need to be a psychologist to do this. I honestly don't think you do. I think if you can sit there and have a really honest conversation just about values and beliefs and where people are coming from, and then say, right, okay, so now we're all in this together and we need to achieve that. How are we going to do that? And what that does, it speaks to the kind of autonomy that you need, because you give them a decision. If you want to continue to fulfill your role outside of work or in work, or to be, your ambition of where you want it to need to be, right now, we need to get there. How are we going to do that? And what you will find, what I always find, and this is honestly without fail, I would say, as a group, at an individual level, sometimes people don't get there fast enough, but as a group, without fail, you will suddenly find an increased level of motivation and an increased level of engagement in order to move in that direction. And I think the biggest advice, a single bit of advice that I could give to people is, and this is kind of, you asked me a question earlier on about, what have I learned about myself? Even if you can tell that they're not moving in the most optimum direction, even if you know they should be doing things in a different direction, just let them have the arc. Let them make the mistakes themselves. Let them learn themselves. Because once they've learned it themselves, it'll stay in and it'll be there forever. Whereas if you tell them and it's just about compliance, it won't stick. So if you're an operations manager, if you're a manufacturing engineering manager or otherwise, don't think about how often do you need to change the filter on the motor so that it doesn't overheat. None of those things. Just get the people in who are responsible for that and have a conversation with them about their values and their beliefs.
Yeah, well, that's a great answer. Do you see anything changing with, you look at AI and automation now, obviously it's changing every industry. and you look at that will obviously drastically change the processes of the ways we certain do things. Do you see that changing any of the models or mindset of leadership moving forward in manufacturing?
Yes, yeah, absolutely, I do. I think. I have I have a real concern about the rate of change and the rate of improvement. I think we've had over the years. I can certainly remember in my career, I think AI as a term's been around for a long time. These kind of false dawns where this is going to change everything and so on and so forth. I can remember quite a lot of them. I mean, I am of a certain age where I can remember where we thought that all computers were going to stop on the millennium because there was a problem with the clock and all this type of stuff. And
Yeah, like that.
there's been all this type of thing. But I just, I mean, I use AI myself, and I am absolutely amazed by its power. And I do worry, and it is a worry. It's not just a concern. The rate of change over the next, even just the next 2 or 3 years. I've got a 14-year-old in senior school, and I think by the time she leaves school, or certainly by the time she leaves college, the world of work will be unrecognizable to what it is now. So I think there's a lot of people who are in task-driven roles where they're doing something which has got the potential to be done by automation and AI. And I think those people, could be worried, and I would be worried. If I think about myself, some people, somebody asked me the other day, would I describe myself as a thought leader? You kind of, in that type of, and I don't know. I don't know if I am or I'm not. I think the price of knowledge has approached zero. If it's not already at zero, you can find out anything you want to find out, and so it becomes about the application of that knowledge. And so I think leadership right now is good is it's going to go through a turbulent time because there are going to be opportunities to look at the workforce, and we can say, okay, I've got a team of 12 people, and AI can either replace them or it can enhance them. And so I think it brings with it an opportunity. And so what I hope and what I would, if somebody was asking me for my advice, or maybe just it's just a hope that I harbor, what I hope we would do as a society is we would look at all these people and we would say, look, the business is already profitable with these people in it. I'm not going to take the mindset of removing people so it's more profitable. I'm going to say, how can I keep these people? Knowledge is, the price of knowledge is going to be zero, or if it's not already zero, how can I use AI so that they can do more?
Yeah.
And they can do something that actually speaks to them as individuals and helps them achieve what they want to achieve as the sense of identity that they have. And I think that brings with it a huge opportunity. And it's not one that you can chart a path through. It's there will be mistakes that will be made. People will be scared. People will be full of fear. What does this mean to me? I've been doing this job I've been doing this same task for the last 10 years, and now you want me to do something different. I don't know what that means to me. Leaders are going to have to help people through that while also navigating their own change, where they're no longer kind of coming into work to make sure that people are doing what they're doing. They're now coming into work every day to see how people are using this wonderful technology that we've come up with to enhance what they do and make the organization better as a whole. So I think certain people, maybe creative thinkers, will arrive at a workable solution faster, but it is undoubtedly going to change. And I don't think that's kind of, by 2035 or 2045. I think this is actually going to happen a lot quicker in the next few years.
Yeah, yeah, I completely agree. Completely agree. Just finally, Dan, if you could, if you could leave the listeners after this episode with the single biggest sort of mindset shift that you'd want them to have, what would it be?
I I'm often wary of saying this, but it comes from a really good place, and the reason why I'm wary of this is, well, I'll just come out with it. So I think the mindset shift was best described at thinking about people as human beings and not about human resources. And I think, again, when I started work, I remember the first factory I went into, it didn't have a human resources department, it had a personnel department. And human resources was then the next thing, and it was kind of a big thing. And so there might be people listening to this podcast, and they will be human resource managers or human resource directors. And that might just be a title, but I think there's something within that which betrays the thinking that was around about the millennium, which was about changing it to a human resource and thinking of people as resources or thinking about people as assets. And I think what I would encourage people to do now is that was absolutely a necessary part of the evolution of how we should be working as a society and working as organizations. But I think now it's about realizing that people are human beings and it's a state. It's a state of being. It's not something that belongs to an organization. The organization is built, is constructed of human beings. It's just a collective. Mark, if you and I wanted to get into business together, the organization would only exist because you and I are in it. It wouldn't be because we've got an office block or that we've bought some software that can automate what we do. The thing that makes it an organization is you and I. We are the organization, right? And so I think changing your mindset to see people as beings and not resources or assets is the mindset shift that I would offer and ask people to adopt.
Great answer. And what's the best way to find you down? And can people already listen to the book then, or download the book? Where are we at?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. So I have got a website. It's focuspotential.uk. So not co.uk, just .uk. You can certainly go on to there. That's the best way or the easiest way to reach me. I'm also on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn as Daniel Stanway. So I use the name that my mum uses, but I go by the name of Dan. So yeah, reach out to me on LinkedIn or go to the website, and all the contact details are on there to reach me.
Look, it's been amazing, mate. I think, if I think about my takeaways, I think that the overriding thing for me, and this is probably a mishmash of all the stuff you said all together, is that human being element of it. And I think one thing that when I've been listening to you, I'm thinking it's still that I need to get better at. It's still that human being approach, actually, because in terms of what does it mean for them? Because I think sometimes as a leader, we get so excited about the outcome and what it should mean for the business, which obviously should mean they will benefit. But how well do we communicate that down to them? And actually,
Yeah.
how well do we involve them in that decision-making process? And like you say, create a safe environment for them to make those mistakes. I think what was interesting for me when you're talking about that AI piece is it just hammered home how important that human connection still is, because you're absolutely right. I can now get onto ChatGPT and say, make me this or give me something which is going to motivate my team. And I could
Yes.
send them that, and that still wouldn't motivate them. But
No.
I could put either, if I felt confident enough, I could do it, or I could put someone like yourself in front of them, and that would motivate them so much more, because we are, as humans, the information has been readily available for years, ever since the
Yes.
internet is there. So it's just quicker now to get there via ChatGPT. It's always been
Yes.
there. But I still think as leaders, we need to understand that importance of us and the role we play in motivating people and creating those environments to make them flourish and progress. And I think this has been a real important episode for me to be involved in, listen to really hammer that home, because it gets back to your point right at the start in terms of that responsibility and privilege of being a leader. And we
Yes.
are in those roles and we've got to embrace it. So yeah, I want to thank you, mate. And that are really important takeaways for me. I'm sure everyone will take something similar as well.
It's been a pleasure, Mark. It's been so fun as well. I'm so glad that we just freewheeled this because it's been
Absolutely.
brilliant.
Yeah. Thank you, mate. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, great stuff. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you so much for listening or watching this episode of the Manufacturing Leaders Podcast. Please just like or subscribe. It really helps grow the show and obviously improve the industry. If you want any more information about Theo James, as I mentioned midway through the episode, please get in touch with me or the team. I would love to talk about how we can help you directly or your business. We are more than just a recruiter, and I know people say that, but it's something I'm incredibly passionate about. We are in business for much more than just a bums on seats approach. We want to help people grow. We want to help improve their lives. And ultimately, I want to work with businesses and people who share the same values as we do. And that's something I'm incredibly passionate about. So please, if that is you and you are passionate about that dream role or passionate about your people, please get in touch with me or the team. I would absolutely love to talk a bit more detail. Thank you very much. Speak soon.